Hey guys, it's Runner, and continuing my Venom Explained / Anthology of Venom, now I get to the part where we discuss Symbiote Spider-Man and so forth. So first off, who is the first host of the Venom symbiote? Believe it or not, this is actually Deadpool. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Where the fuck did that came from? Like, just suddenly out of the blue, Wade Wilson shows up and takes it? Well, yeah, I get it. A little bit of a goofy storyline, but it basically explains that Wade Wilson was the first ever to pick up the symbiote, originally where it was, in containment. Now, let me explain. With Secret Wars, Secret Wars was an event where basically, let me shortly summarize it, heroes versus villains. If heroes win, they get a wish. Villains win, they get a wish. And the Beyonder is the one that's giving the wishes. He took them to a different planet called Battle World. And the symbiote's there. That's all you need to know. Don't want to explain anymore. So, well enough. So Spider-Man's there. Now, this is where Deadpool comes in. It's a later storyline because Secret Wars was in the 80s. This is a later storyline in, like, I think 2016. But it basically explains that Deadpool was actually in Secret Wars secretly and was a part of it, and that got the symbiote, and that's the reason why that the symbiote's so fucking batshit crazy. Which, yeah, it's not entirely, but it basically just explains that Wade Wilson corrupted it with insanity, and that any host can. Now remember that, because that'll come into play later when we talk about Matt Gargan later, and I'll get to that. So with Deadpool out of the way, he basically says, "Oh, you know what? Fuck it. This thing's alive. It's kind of fucked up. I'm gonna put it secretly right back where I found it on this alien planet." And so, with the original storyline, Spider-Man needs a new costume, right? It's all torn up. He has nothing, right? He can't run around in ashes and scratch marks and all that shit. And so apparently, the Thing tells him, "What? Hey, there's a costume machine in the back. I got a new one. It literally, some like weird alien tech where you can just think it and it'll come out." Well, he goes down to where it was. Turns out, he picked the wrong thing. And out pops the symbiote and it bonds to him. And then the black symbiote Spider-Man is revealed. Now, why did this happen? Well, there's a little story about a fan named... Well, let me first preface by saying I talked in person at a Comic-Con to the person who created Symbiote Spider-Man. I didn't ever believe that it would happen, but Mike Zeck even got his autograph. It's great talk. And he basically explained that the story about Randy Schueller is mostly true, but it's hyped up a little bit because Randy Schueller turned in a fan costume thing. It was like basically a fan costume contest, and he turned in a black and red suit. Looks sort of similar to the symbiote design because obviously that's where it's from. And then Mike Zeck was basically commissioned to redesign what the fan did. So Mike Zeck designed the symbiote suit and the classic black and white look and the classic emblem and everything, whatever, and created him. They just wanted a new suit, right? That's why. And so what happened was fan reception was so bad that they wanted a way to get it off. So instead, a man named David Michelini decided, well, why don't we take another idea from an Iron Fist comic, if you know who that is, which a good amount of comic fans would, basically took the idea of a symbiote suit. living suit from Iron Fist, because they wanted Iron Fist, they wanted to give him a costume that would regenerate, right? So they give this idea in mind, and they basically just wanted the suit to be cool, right? Because the fan reception was so bad, they were like, okay, well, let's explain. It's a cool suit. It can regenerate. He can use it to turn into clothes. Like this hoodie, he can make it exactly like that. This shirt is whatever. Any clothing you can imagine. It has unlimited webbing. He doesn't have to, believe it or not, Spider-Man doesn't, if you don't know, Spider-Man doesn't have webbing out of his body. So he has to use web shooters, right? That he designs. Well, he doesn't need that anymore. He can just use the suit. Cool alien tech, right? So obviously, they wanted to make it cool, and they wanted to make all these cool perks about it. But fan reception, again, so bad, they canceled it. They said, okay, let's find a way to take it off. And so David Michelinie took that symbiote idea and said, I want to turn it into a villain, right? Because he was like the only person that had any idea with it, mostly. Obviously, there's a lot of execs rambling and a lot of copy and cutting, but basically there was an original storyline which featured a female version of Venom, which didn't pass because they didn't think a female would be threatening enough. I don't really want to get into that too much, because that's not what we're here to talk about. And so they basically said, okay, we're going to give it to a dude who hates Spider-Man, wants to kill him, and will therefore do it, and with the symbiote. So, without further ado, now we talk about the downfall of the symbiote. It basically all started with Spider-Man talks to Reed Richards, right, of the Fantastic Four. And he gets Reed to investigate it and check it out. What he discovers is that it's alive. And this scares the shit out of Peter. Because obviously, you know, hearing that, oh yeah, by the way, your suit's alive, and it could be starting to bond with your cells and perhaps your personality. This scared him, obviously. So he wanted to remove it. Now, the symbiote wasn't too bad at this point. It wasn't evil. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't evil. It had moments where it was questionable, very questionable, and moments where it was outright wrong. But in this case, it was basically rejected. And Reed Richards takes the suit off with sonics, because he discovers that high-powered sonics and sound can remove it, right? So he removes it, puts it in a tank, and a containment, and Spidey does his own thing. And then, eventually, the symbiote breaks out, secretly, follows back to Peter, and then the church bell scene, the iconic one, happens. And now at this point, we've discussed everything so far with the Symbiote Spider-Man saga. Now we need to wrap up Origin of Eddie Brock. So this is Eddie's adulthood now. He now wants to become a reporter, and he's picked up this case about the Sin Eater. And this was another Spider-Man storyline where basically there was this villain called Sin Eater who was killing anyone corrupt in any law, any police, judges, anyone. And he was on a religious crusade. It's a whole different storyline. So Eddie picks it up, and he basically, a copycat killer leads him on a wild goose chase, right? And whether or not it's discussed that this is because Sin Eater planned it, or because this is just a copycat killer, doesn't matter. Basically, Spider-Man catches the real Sin Eater, while Eddie Brock tries to catch this copycat, which turns out to be fake, so he's disgraced. So, this is the downfall of Eddie Brock. At this point, he's now completely disappointed his father, and now his father wants nothing with him. So, that's one bad thing, right? and the daddy issues have gone 100% off the rails. His wife leaves him, Anne Wang, has a divorce. He gets cancer, severe cancer, to the point that he's dying right now. And his life has just gone to shit. He's disgraced as a reporter. His career's ruined. He has no way to bounce back from this, right? He's considered a public fraud, and a hell of a one. You know, like an infamous case. You look back and you see Eddie Brock, disgraced journalist. So now, and think about it in this mindset. Eddie Brock, at the lowest point of his life, already psychologically fucked up, and now he's gonna come in contact with a symbiote that wants to kill Peter. So what happens is Eddie Brock is now going insane, and he's having basically a psychotic delusion that this is the fault of Spider-Man. And whether or not this is true entirely is somewhat questionable, although it's explored. But from what we know, Eddie Brock, therefore, in this delusion, believes that Spider-Man is the reason why his life has gone to shit. Obviously not the cancer, but just the reason why his career's ruined, and his father's disgraced him, and his wife's left him, and now he's got nothing, and he's about to kill himself, right? And he's in the church, and Spider-Man's up at the church bells, ringing off the symbiote, and now here's the birth of Venom. So the symbiote is basically now trying to stay on to Peter, while Peter's trying to remove it and reject it, and it actually, believe it or not, saves his life, the symbiote does, by getting him away from the church bells before they both die, right? And from this point on, Sonics are only able to damage Venom, hurt him, basically, just hurt him and weaken him. But at that point, it wasn't used to it yet, right? So it could have died, but the symbiote saved him, but he still rejected it. And so it's like, in the symbiote's mind, bitch, I just saved your life. I've been trying to bond with you to give you fucking cool-ass power boosts, and you've been calling me a parasite, you've been calling me a piece of shit, and now that I saved your life, you reject me, and you still want me gone? Fuck you. Now I'm gonna take back the shit you put me through, and I'm gonna hunt your ass down. So basically, Eddie Brock is below in the church, and the timing is a little bit different. Whether or not it happened the same night depends. I don't believe it did, but basically, Eddie Brock is about to kill himself in this church, praying to God that if he doesn't have a sign, if he doesn't have a reason to live, if he's not given one soon, he will do it. He will, do whatever to kill himself. And then the symbiote gets him, right? Now you've given a semi-religious nut with psychological issues, a suicidal one too, and now you give him the thought that this is predestiny, and that the symbiote was supposed to come here because this is the sign from God that he needs to kill Spider-Man. And you can imagine. So, and then the symbiote basically bonds with Eddie, talks to him, and tells him about all of his past, that it's been with Spider-Man, it's been with Peter Parker, and that it knows everything about Peter, and it wants revenge too. And it knows that Eddie is having that delusion and believes that Spider-Man ruined his life, and now it basically persuades him into, you know what? I can bond with you, give you incredible powers, and make your journey of your redemption and your path of God. I can make it possible, and we can kill Spider-Man. And so, that is the birth of Venom. Now, I'll continue in another episode. Gotta record that.